Hey guys, what's going on? It's Eli, back with another review video, and welcome to GoreVerbinski Movie Week. That's right, yes. All throughout this week, I will be reviewing a batch of films that are directed by a brilliant visionary filmmaker, which, I mean, you know, with me saying brilliant, I mean, he is brilliant. He's a genius. Even though, yeah, he's had his ups and downs and such, that doesn't stop the fact that he's a visionary filmmaker and all that. Yes, GoreVerbinski, as I said. Yep. And, I mean, when it comes to GoreVerbinski, what we know GoreVerbinski the most would have to be, say, some of his, from his top masterpieces from The Ring, Rango, and most prominently, the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise, the first three, the trilogy and such, yeah. But, aside from those, other films that he's done, well, most of them being underrated and such, and not talked about that much as much as, say, the ones I just mentioned. But even like, say, Mouse Hunt. Now, Mouse Hunt, that was another good one of Verbinski's, and that being a 90s classic. Yeah. So that's right. The first GoreVerbinski film that I'm now reviewing, part of GoreVerbinski Movie Week, well, that's right, because you read the title, and you know exactly which GoreVerbinski film this is that I am now about to review. Yes, from 2001, The Mexican. Yep. Yeah, so the first things I have to say about The Mexican, well, I heard a little bit about this before, especially when, looking up more of what GoreVerbinski directed and such. Besides the biggest ones that he's done that I mentioned. Yeah, Rango, Ring, and Pirates. And, 4 years after he directed his first theatrical film, straight from DreamWorks, which of course being Mouse Hunt, he would once again return to the director's chair, directing another film for DreamWorks, which being this. And yeah, because with what The Mexican has to offer, and with what it's like, it's very interesting. A very interesting film where, Brad Pitt's character, he's in a very tight situation, he's a hapless man, and he's trying to retrieve a cursed antique pistol in Mexico. Retrieve it and such for this mob he works for and such. And, slowly but surely, things would get out of hand. I mean, at first, he went through a horrible breakup with his girlfriend, and even when his girlfriend would get into this situation and all that, even though that, she broke up with him and such, they broke up. And, to sit down and watch the film itself and all of its entire glory, and I'd seen it before, but, obviously I had to do a rewatch, and here I am now doing my review. Yeah, because it's pretty interesting, and I, of course, say that in a good way. I thought that The Mexican, with what it had to offer, yeah, great cast of talents, with the storyline and involving a antique cursed pistol, and most of the film being set in Mexico, but also taking place in Las Vegas, where Brad Pitt's on-screen girlfriend, she'd be making her way to. In fact, that's where she would wanted to go end up living at, in Las Vegas and such. All of these other characters that get involved in this, and, a few of them tagging along with Pitt's character, and those tagging along with, the girlfriend, played by Julia Roberts, yeah. And all the suspense and moments you don't see coming and such, and, the talk of love, and when Pitt's character would get some interesting stories about, the pistol, and whom he's supposed to return the pistol to specifically. Yeah, it's just really interesting. Enjoyable, all of the above. And yeah, I mean, this being an underrated film of Verbinski's, but at the same time, there's really nothing bad about it. None whatsoever. And to think that, just 1 year after he directed this, he would go on to direct, well, one of the films I mentioned earlier that, yeah, would leave such a huge impact, and again, that of course being The Ring, another film that Verbinski would direct under DreamWorks. Yeah. But yeah, just overall, The Mexican, it's really good. Worth watching, enjoyable, and of course, for any of you who are into Verbinski's work of films and, with some of the Verbinski films you've seen and you want to check out more of his, then this would be one of them, of course. Yeah. With great cast of talents, its direction of Verbinski's, everything that happens. Music is also really good too, but yeah. Just overall, I really enjoyed The Mexican for what it is. Very interesting, enjoyable, etc. Okay, so with the first things I've had to say about The Mexican said / out of the way, now, as always, for me, read the description / the story. Brad Pitt stars as Jerry Welback. Yeah, I think I'm saying that last name right, pretty sure. A reluctant bagman who has been given two ultimatums. Yeah. The first is from his mob boss to travel to Mexico and retrieve a priceless antique pistol known as the Mexican, hence the title of the film, or suffer the consequences. The second is from his girlfriend, Samantha, to end his association with the mob. Jerry figures alive and in trouble with Samantha is better than the more permanent alternative, so he heads south of the border. Okay, now with reading the description / the story said / out of the way, now let us dive in / break down The Mexican itself. Okay, so, interesting start, because, like, at one point, and as the music plays, and we get a shot of a traffic light, and with something going wrong with the lights, it causes a wreck, and, let me just go ahead and say more about the music that, yeah, the music's brilliant, from the harmonica, the banjo, everything that plays, it's just amazing, yeah. And then, of course, we are introduced to our main protagonist, Jerry Welback, being played by none other than Brad Pitt. And he basically, paying a debt to, mob boss and such, Arnold, Margolis. Yeah, I think I'm saying that right. And at one point, because when he was supposed to botch, his final assignment, well, he would be brought in for one more assignment and such, and also his co-working buddy, Ted's Solsum, yeah, I think I'm saying his last name right, who would tag along with him and such, being played by another great talent in this film, J.K. Simmons. Yep. And man, just seeing J.K. Simmons with the hair getup he has, pretty interesting, but it works for him in this movie. Well, they meet with Margolis's right-hand man, Bernie Neyman, and they just call him by his last name, Neyman, in the entire movie. But I'll just stick with Bernie, yeah. Bernie being played by another great talent, Bob Balaban, yeah. Basically, Bernie informs Jerry about one more assignment that he's being put to the task to. Go to Mexico to retrieve a antique pistol and such, and to bring it to the man himself, Margolius. Yeah. Also, alongside with Bernie, because someone else working there, and because he's a great character actor, because he's credited. Yeah, there he is, yeah. Jeremy Roberts. Yeah, Jeremy Roberts appearing in this film as Bobby Victor. Yeah, because, he works at that place too with the mob gang and all that, and also being alongside with Bernie. But yeah, the moments that we get of Jeremy Roberts in this is pretty good. Yeah. But, yeah, on account that Jerry is being sent to Mexico to retrieve this pistol, and he's got to do it one way or the other, or if not, then his life is over. This does not settle well with his girlfriend, Samantha Barzell. Yeah. Or just, named Sam for short. Sam being played by another great talent in this film, Julia Roberts. Yeah. Man, Julia Roberts as Sam at times in this movie and with Julia Roberts' performance, she can be a handful. Yeah, and especially her rage and all that towards Jerry, I tell you. And this is the final straw for her, with this assignment that Jerry has been given. And, I mean, Sam being aware of whom Jerry works for, but, you know, there's a lot more that, I don't think, you know, because, like, it's complicated and such. Anyways, but, I mean, Jerry, again, he has no choice, because he's got to do this one way or the other. And even when he tries to tell Sam that after this, then it's over, and they can both live their lives together. But Sam, she's just having none of it. And when she wanted to go to Las Vegas and all that, yeah, but just overall, it ends badly. And Sam would therefore break up with Jerry, and Jerry, he would then find himself on to the next plane to Mexico. And as for Sam, well, her going off to Vegas herself. Yep. So, Jerry, making his way to Mexico, and, you know, through many conversations he would have with those at Mexico, like those at the airport and such, and trying to get a pretty good car and such, like, yeah, those at the airport in Mexico. Mexican ticket agent played by Ariane Pellicer, if I'm saying that right, and the Mexican car rental rep being played by Carlos La Camara, and there was also the Mexican bartender played by Daniel Zacapa. Yeah, well, yeah, ultimately because the car that Jerry gets, and he would make his destination to where he's supposed to retrieve the antique pistol from this kid named Beck. And Beck being played by another good talent in this film, David Krumholtz, a.k.a. Bernard the Elf from the Santa Claus films, amongst others that he's been in. Yeah. But I'm sure for a good majority of us, we know him best as Bernard. The same goes for me as well, but anyways. Yeah, so, yeah, at the bar, and as I mentioned, the bartender, yeah, Jerry would make his way inside the bar, and not to mention, outside of this village, a lot of celebration is happening, you know, them setting off fireworks and drunken Mexican guys, like, shooting off their guns in the air. But, yeah, Jerry having a conversation with Beck seems to go pretty well. And then Beck would explain to Jerry the details and all that with this antique pistol. It's not just any antique pistol, because, yeah, with it having a name to it, and supposedly it's cursed, yeah. And again, the name of the pistol, this antique pistol, being called the Mexican. Roll credits, as CinemaSin says. But anyways, so Beck would explain the story about, you know, this antique pistol. And yeah, because the gunsmith whom built the pistol, because according to Beck, this pistol, being called the Mexican, was built by this gunsmith as a gift to the landowner, the nobleman, and in hopes that the nobleman's son will take the gunsmith's daughter in hand of marriage and all that. And then we would cut to, yeah, storytelling, and even when a film roll sound is played. That's nice detail there. And yeah, the way that it's filmed, and the music that plays with it, the trumpet, yeah, I love it. Again, the music and score in The Mexican is brilliant, yeah. But back on point, because, yeah, you know, the townspeople, according to Beck, they waited 3 months for the pistol to be made, and just being so gorgeous and handmade, because, yeah, even Jerry, because admiring how beautiful it looks, even to this day still, in the timeline of the movie. Because, you know, of course, keep in mind, the pistol was made long ago, and yeah, for 3 months, as I said, the townspeople waiting, and so beautiful that they just had to keep their eyes away from looking at it. And the gunsmith would handpick one of the townspeople to try out the pistol. Yeah. And the gunsmith, being played by Salvador Sanches, if I'm saying his last name right, but again, you know me sometimes. And also the gunsmith's daughter, whom we do see in the stories about the pistol and such, you know, and with the gunsmith, yeah, and being just credited as the gunsmith's daughter, being played by Melissa Romero. Yes, Romero. Like, yeah, that's a fitting way to say it. Romero. Anyways, so, again, the gunsmith handpicking one of the townspeople, this tall young lad, and, yeah, placing a Vas and a Voss, I think, yeah, that's the correct way of saying it, and, yeah, just to test it out and such, and, well, obviously, the pistol's going to, you know, destroy the Voss, but actually, what happens is when the trigger's pulled, the bullet would bounce around, and actually, because, yeah, it would, like, once he triggers it, like, it just, he falls on his back. It was the total opposite. It backfired and such. Yeah. And, yeah, it just didn't go according to plan. But that's the story that Beck shares. Also, yeah, because not only is Jerry supposed to retrieve the pistol, the Mexican, and bring it to the old man, as Beck calls him, yeah, Margolis, but also Beck is to tag along with Jerry, because Beck is the grandson of Arnold Margolis. And to go ahead and mention this, because all throughout this film, they're talking and building up about the mentioning of Margolis, and you know, believe it or not, because we would visually see him, but not until up to the last, like, 22 minutes remaining of this movie. And whom plays Arnold Margolis? And the fact that he's one of the top billed cast members of this, the fact that he appears very later on in the movie. Like, just, oh well, that's just how it is in the movie, but until we get there, of course. Anyways, so Beck, because he's full of himself, because when making their way to the car that Jerry rented and such, he's driving through Mexico. Beck, because at one point he's taking a piss and he's accidentally pissing on himself, but yeah. Then out of nowhere, because when they're talking more about, you know, Beck's old man, and even said to his old man at one point, F off and such. Well, out of nowhere, Beck, when he was talking some more, he just stops, and there was a thud, and he collapsed. What, because he passed out because he was so drunk or something, and he was pissing himself? Well, even when Jerry thought so too, but once he picks him up and he drags him to the car, he buckles his seatbelt, Jerry would notice something very off with Beck. His head would slide down, and there's blood that's on the car seat. And then when taking off his hat, he sees that there's a bullet hole on the top of his head. Beck died! A bullet went straight through him! So, yeah, that's how much we get of Beck, and that's the end of him. Golly. Oh, well, I mean, you know, it's just one of those, and even with how much we got of David Krumholtz in this film, wasn't bad at all, because, you know, he's an enjoyable actor. Anyways, so, because, yeah, this is a very troublesome situation. Yeah, shit just happened, but at least he still got the gun, for now. Jerry would actually manage to call up his buddy Ted, informing Ted about what the heck just happened. Well, he got the gun, and was gonna bring the gun and Margoli's grandson in, but just out of nowhere, yeah, Beck died, and with Jerry explaining about this, and, you know, nearby, because so many, like, fireworks and gunshots going off in the air, because maybe one of the bullets landed on Beck. It's hard to tell. And what now? Because with Margoli's grandson dead, just what now? Well, Ted, I mean, he's at one point planning to come to Mexico and help out with Jerry's situation. But at one point, their call gets cut off and such. Then, we can see this at one point, that someone in a car approaches the car that Jerry was driving and steals it. Yeah, the car, you know, goes off, and so does one guy in that other car taking Jerry's car, and with it, the pistol and the body of Beck. So, yeah, now Jerry's completely screwed. What's he gonna do now? And word would get back to Margoli's right-hand man, Bernie. Yeah, because when Jeremy Roberts' character, yeah, Bobby Victor, informs Bernie about what's just happened, and on account that, yeah, Jerry being responsible for this and all that. Anyways, so when we would come back to Sam, she's now she's making her way to Vegas and all that. And, well, at one point, she's at a mall, and, well, we would see two guys that are each keeping an eye on Sam. And, yeah, well-dressed black man, as he's credited, being played by Sherman Augustus. Yep. And Leroy. Yep, that's his name. Leroy, being played by another great talent in this film, the late, great James Gandolfini. Yep, so each of them having their drinks, and they're keeping an eye on Sam until at one point she would make her way to the bathroom. Each of them would follow. They throw away each of their drinks, even a drink that Samantha had. And when Sam would make her way to the ladies' room, well, the well-dressed black man is the first to arrive, and yeah, has Sam at gunpoint and just telling her to be quiet, shut up, and do as he says, and she won't get hurt and all that, even when because she's starting to cry, and he tells her not to cry. And when hearing someone else come into the ladies' restroom, well, the well-dressed black man being very precautious, opening the stall door and so on. And sure enough, Leroy was hiding in the main door leading inside to the ladies' room and opens fire on the black man. And now Leroy takes Sam hostage. And, Leroy asking Sam where her car is, a green Beetle, and Leroy would drive and almost causing a wreck, like driving fast and almost about to collide with a truck and all that, and eventually they would pull over. Sam, she would puke. Leroy, at least, he's being kind enough to hand her, a napkin and all that to wipe her mouth off. And Leroy would explain to Samantha about what all is happening, about Jerry in the shit books, and on account of the incident that happened with the pistol and such, Leroy was sent by Bernie, Leroy being one of Bernie's guys, and basically, long story short, like Leroy explaining to Sam, whoever has got the gal will get the pistol and such. So basically, when Jerry finds out that Leroy has Sam in his hands and all that, then he will come directly with the pistol, hand the pistol over to Leroy, and Leroy will give his girl to him. And all will be settled. If nothing happens, if nothing funky goes on, and even Leroy explained that he's gonna try to prevent the funkiness happening, and so on. Sam, on the other hand, because it's very complicated, because, the fact that they broke up and such, but not exactly. Even when, the later conversation that they would each have while they're on the road, and even when at one point, Leroy would try to make a phone call to Jerry to inform Jerry that Leroy's got his gal. And even when coming back to Jerry, well, he's been struggling trying to find his stolen car. He took a donkey at one point, but the donkey did not cooperate in the end. Then Jerry would catch a ride in the back of a truck. When he managed to make some good conversations with the truck driver, then it would lead to Jerry, purchasing a truck, vehicle and such, which comes with a dog, being very vicious and such, and having a deflated football. But even overall, like the dog and Jerry, they would kind of bond as the film proceeds a little. But anyways, like I said, Leroy, he would at one point attempt to call Jerry to inform him that, he's got his gal, and Leroy telling Sam to make the call, but Sam, she has no idea where to call Jerry on account that she broke up with him. How is she supposed to know the number and all that? So the first attempt to call Jerry doesn't go so well. Then at one point, we would see Sam going to the ladies' restroom, and I think it's obvious where this is heading, because Sam would try to escape from the back of the restroom through one of the windows. And Leroy, he knew that she was gonna do this. He's a professional, as he says. Then when they're back on the road, making their way to Vegas, Leroy would ask Sam, what's it like in Vegas? In other words, asking what she's gonna be doing going to Vegas. Sam explaining that, she attempts to be a waitress, then make a career, make $1,000 a year and all that. Then she would explain more about Jerry to Leroy, because, about Jerry's complicated past life, because, Jerry had a mom who was nuts, and always being, sometimes later being a prick and all that, and lying and all that. not keeping to the truth and with all that she says. And then both Leroy and Sam, they would get into this conversation about couples, love, and all that. And if Sam still does love Jerry. And Sam explaining that, they both seem to love each other too much and all that. And Leroy explaining about, relationships and how complicated it is and all that. And, I mean, in the end, long story short, because all that matters, and throughout that conversation, Sam did say herself that she still loves Jerry. And Leroy, pointing that out to Sam and saying that that's all that matters. And, even Sam complimenting and saying this to Leroy, that he's a very sensitive person, and for him being a cold-blooded killer. Yeah, that's true. But anyways, obviously right here, very slowly but surely, a good chemistry and such is starting to build up between Leroy and Samantha. And if it turns out all that great in the end, we're gonna find out as this movie proceeds, that's for sure. Okay, but coming back to Jerry in Mexico, at one point, Jerry would finally locate and stumble upon the stolen car of his, and then he would plan to make an accident where, he points the gun at the dog to get out of the back of the truck, because, he's about to ram the truck in one of the cars to make it look like it was an accident. And once he does so, everybody coming out, including the car thief, being called Car Thief Number 1, being played by Richard Coca, they're falling for it, and, then Jerry has his chance and shot. He takes the car thief hostage, telling them to back off and, telling them to return his stuff, the keys to the car, his shades, his jacket, all of that. And the pistol, it's right there. So, and also taking the car thief hostage, having him ride in the car, and Jerry's obviously going to take care of that car thief once and for all after what he did. Then when coming back to Leroy and Sam, they're at another rest stop, and Leroy's got, the restroom closed off and such at this diner, and because they stop at a diner, but first using the restroom, and, Leroy would ask Sam about something that came up in their conversation while they were on the road, living his life forever, the speech she gave, and, her saying that it was just, she was just a figure of speech, and, and she would explain about, how Jerry had been working with Arnold, for 5 years, less a day, and then the mentioning of, Jerry being responsible for getting Arnold in jail and such, because, with it being mentioned and all that, because that, currently, Arnold Margolis is in jail, and when Leroy discovers that, Jerry was responsible for accidentally getting Arnold in jail, that's why, because Sam would explain, long story short, that, Jerry was coming off of Ventura, Laurel Canyon, and he wasn't paying attention. He ran over a red light, and he accidentally rammed into Arnold's Cadillac, and it would be discovered by the reinforcements that would, come to check and such, that in the back of Arnold's Cadillac, gotta slow down, there was a body in the trunk, a live person, and that person would have been dead either way, and this would lead Arnold to go into jail. Not Jerry, according to Sam, the more details she describes and such. And technically Arnold, did help out Jerry from not preventing him going to jail and all that, so, So, I mean, that of course would explain, the whole debt thing in return, Jerry would do for Arnold and such, but But when coming back to Jerry, because, even, say, when, as Sam was talking with Leroy, because, Sam is in one of the stalls, she's having a hard time trying to go to the bathroom on account of him, but then he would go into another stall, he would urinate, and so would she, But coming back to Jerry in Mexico, because, him confronting the car thief, he even placed the inflatable football on top of his head, and the dog just snarling at him and all that. And, Jerry then telling the dog to get the inflated football, And Jerry says to the car thief that he's not going to kill him, but he's still going to shoot him, because after what he did and such. And at first, like, maybe he's going to go for his legs, but the car thief telling him, not the legs, and maybe the foot. Not the left, the right foot. And Jerry, I mean, even though he's doing this, he's still going to be sparing him and all that. But, yeah, so Jerry, on the count of 3, firing on the car thief's foot. 1. He didn't even get to 3. After 1, he shoots him, like, obviously to make the car thief, not expect that. Just expecting to, 1, 2, 3, yeah, but, 1, he wasn't prepared. Anyways, but, yeah, so, and, of course, that's not the last we see of the car thief. And to go ahead and mention the other car thieves, because, yeah, there's more than just one car thief that's in this film, and they too just being called car thieves and how they're credited. Car Thief 2 being played by Alfredo Escobra, if I said that right, and Car Thief 3 being played by Louis Ardiganen, if I even got the name right. But again, you know me sometimes, nothing intentional, but alright, moving on. Yeah, because coming back to Leroy and Sam, because still talking about Jerry some, and also, yeah, because this would be brought up at times, sex and travel and such, so talking about that and, sex, and then at one point, Leroy would have a moment, and Sam knew this. Leroy has a moment where he sees and notices a guy at the bar wearing a ball cap and such, and yeah, that was a moment he had, and Sam's on to him, because the moment he had, and when she would get to him, and not to be a smartass or anything like that, and with what she says, but if Leroy's gay, as in happy, he asks? No, gay, homosexual and such, and, more she's leaning on to him and all that is, yeah. And, yeah, because he definitely had a moment, and when he would look at that guy again, and just then talking about relationships and such, and, Leroy, he would say to Sam, like, not being able to keep a relationship, attached or anything like that, and, yeah. But Sam, because, like, she's very impressed with Leroy. She's happy for him and all that, because, having a moment, and, Sam being very supportive of Leroy, and, maybe Leroy has a shot with this guy in particularly. But anyways, and yeah, to speed things up some, because, yeah, coming back to Jerry, because, yeah, well, he would then, bury, Beck's body, even putting the shades there, his hat and such. Yeah, good on Jerry. Then he would stop at a gas station, and he would use the phone to reach out to Ted and such. And even the Mexican gas station guy, because yeah, that was, yeah, gas station clerk, yeah, Mexican gas station clerk being played by George Malpica, if I said that right. Yeah, because, well, Jerry had purchased something, he bought something, was going to give some money, but this gas station clerk just like, no thanks, like, it's on you, it's on the house and such, And Jerry being very, pleased by that, because how very kind that is of the clerk. And yeah, the phone call that Jerry would receive from Ted, basically Ted informing Jerry to be at the Hotel de Plaza, yeah. Yeah, so that's where Jerry has to go to be there and wait for Ted to arrive and such, and yeah, on account with Ted being there, hopefully this can be resolved. Then, at one point, Jerry would come face-to-face with someone that, is checking on his car and has a little interaction with the dog, the dog, of course, being a little intimidated and such. Yeah, the Mexican policeman being played by Pedro Armendariz Jr., yeah. Asking Jerry for his passport, and because he's American and such, and asking him how long he's been here in Mexico, and most prominently, the Mexican policeman would point out and ask Jerry about what's with this, like the blood stain and the car and such. And Jerry, well, he would get himself in jail. And yeah, then it would lead to the Mexican policeman checking out the antique pistol, the Mexican. And it would lead to the Mexican policeman talking about another story involving the pistol, and on account of the gunsmith, of course. And also, the Mexican policeman addresses to Jerry that, yeah, the story that he was told is inaccurate, because, sure, yes, most of it's true with the gunsmith building the Mexican for the nobleman, and on account of the nobleman's son, and, the nobleman's son taking the gunsmith's daughter's hand in marriage and such, but the morphit is dark and such, as the Mexican policeman says. And, then when we would translate into the storytelling, well, this story actually centering on the gunsmith's assistant. The gunsmith's assistant being played by Alan Cianharoti, if I even got his last name right, but again, you know me sometimes. He was in love with the gunsmith's daughter. And, well, the gunsmith's assistant helping out with the gunsmith, collecting metal and all that to make the most beautiful handcrafted pistol ever brought to life and such, and for it to be used. Well, when the gunsmith's assistant was hoping that maybe he would marry his boss's daughter, well, it was not to be. The love being forbidden, and his daughter was going to be married to someone else, and this upsetting his assistant very much so, that he would curse the pistol, vowing that its creation would never prevail and all that. And, yeah, basically just doing whatever it takes to, for him and his boss's daughter to be together, and so on. And like what we saw before in that first story that Beck shared with Jerry, where, yeah, someone was handpicked by the gunsmith, one of the townspeople, to test out the gun, but on account with what the gunsmith's assistant did to it, yeah, prevailing it to be in working progress, yeah, because, yeah, when that one guy, was, he pulled the trigger, which was supposed to shoot at a vase, well, it bounced off, and it hit directly into one of the buildings, hitting some, stranger, this Mexican cowboy, and yeah, he died instantly, collapsing, and, well, yeah, because the gunsmith, just head-scratching, and just, what went wrong, and just, yeah. And again, the gunsmith's assistant vowing for the creation never to prevail, and just be out of order, and so on. So, that's the Mexican policeman's side of the story. And then the Mexican policeman would actually set free Jerry, but he can't take the gun with him, because the Mexican policeman addresses to Jerry that the gun doesn't belong to him or his boss. And it was mentioned earlier, and I think it would be obvious that, yeah, clearly, the Mexican policeman, he's going after the gun himself. And because apparently it was said earlier that everyone is just going for this gun. So, yeah. But, yeah, obviously, yeah, surely Jerry's gonna, in one way, gonna get that pistol back. Okay, so now coming back to Sam and Leroy, and to still speed things up some, because, yeah, now the guy that Leroy was staring at, he had a moment. He's tagging along now with Sam and Leroy. And this guy being named Frank, and Frank being played by Michael Severus, if I'm getting his last name right, but yeah. Anyways, so yeah, the talk that all three of them have, and when they learn that Frank is a postman, and he most prominently has been delivering porno stuff and such, yeah. But, overall, their conversation seems to be going pretty well. And on account that they're very soon making their way straight to Las Vegas. Yeah. Meanwhile, back in Mexico, by this point, Ted, he made his way to Mexico. And Ted getting a ride, and yeah, in that same way that Jerry dealt with, expecting a very nice ride, and in Mexico and such. And eventually, yeah, Jerry, he made his way to the Hotel de Plaza, and yeah, Ted being there, yeah, it's a nice reunion and such, have no fear, Ted is here. And a little later, when they settle in the hotel, then they start talking about, what's happened, and on account of the pistol and such, and yeah, and my bad, it wasn't talked about earlier. Yeah, this is where Ted, for the first time we're hearing this, talks about, people, trying to get their hands on the Mexican, the pistol, that is. And, just the conversation that Jerry and Ted have themselves getting into, bit of arguing and such, and, Jerry, he didn't mean to screw up what happened on account of the death of Becken. When at first he lost the gun, he got it back for a little bit, but then it was taken from him by that Mexican policeman. And, Ted making it very clear to Jerry that, hopefully things will go well, and, keep his nose clean and such, and, they'll get the pistol back. Even though, unfortunately, Arnold's grandson Beck has sadly died. But hopefully all goes well. Then coming back to Sam, Leroy, and Frank, they finally made their way to Las Vegas. And they're having the time of their life. They're partying and such in one of the hotel rooms they're staying in. Then it would lead to where, yeah, it all quiets down. They go into another part of the hotel room, just Frank and Leroy. And, well, Sam just being left there on one bed, and Sam addressing to Leroy that she's not going anywhere because they're literally at the place where she's gonna live the rest of her life and such. And yeah, then they would talk a little some more, and when Sam admits to Leroy that even though, because yeah, she's under a lot of stress on account of Jerry, by this point she is worried about him. Yeah, and Leroy asking Sam if he wants him to stay, to keep her accompanied and such, but no, she insists on spending time with Frank, just the two of them. Yeah, obviously this is gonna lead to them, but yeah, it's great to see by this point that, and if it stays this way, and with how far they've come, and how, how Sam has reached out to Leroy, just, and, even Leroy, because still being occupied, yeah, he handcuffs Samantha to the bed, and, yeah, even though Sam, she gave her word, still, he's being very precautious. But, yeah, that's great to see that, for once, Leroy has actually found somebody. And it's also thanks to Sam, that's for sure. Then, by the next day, and back in Mexico, well, Ted at one point has a heated phone call with Bernie. We only hear, Ted talking and such, not Bernie, through the phone, because Bernie's putting Ted up to the task to do something on account of Jerry, and, with how Ted feels about this, being put in that situation. And Jerry can overhear this, of course, because, Ted took the phone call into the bathroom and all that, just, yeah. It's not looking too good, and on account of how Jerry's reacting to this, but yeah, we're of course going to find out where it's going to lead to next, and yeah, once both Ted and Jerry, they attempt to try to retrieve and get back the pistol, aka the Mexican. Oh, and also Ted did mention to Jerry about, because of what Jerry accidentally did. He got Beck killed, he lost the pistol. Well, yeah, Ted mentioned to Jerry that Bernie sent one of his guys to retrieve and bring in Sam. And yeah, of course, to get Jerry's attention and to bring in the pistol and such, and if all goes well. And Jerry, of course, he doesn't like the sound of this, and asking Ted, whom is it? And Ted saying it's Leroy from Minnesota. Jerry's like, Leroy, that son of a... Yeah, this doesn't please him. But again, Ted trying to assure Jerry that if everything goes well, nothing funky, as Leroy said it best, nothing goes haywire, then they'll get the pistol, they'll meet with them at the airport. in Mexico and such, all that. Well, not in Mexico, but where Jerry is supposed to go to. Both him and Ted, they're supposed to go to another airport, well, down in Vegas, where they're currently at right now. So, yeah. Yeah, but of course, we're going to find out what happens next. But surely, it's not going to go well, knowing where we're at now. Okay, but to still speed things up some, back in Vegas, because, yeah, with morning approaching in Vegas, and Leroy just sitting there, because, you know, you can see Frank still asleep in bed, and same goes for Samantha. And then Leroy would then uncuff Sam, because after all that's happened and such, yeah, now Leroy seems to be more softened towards Sam and trusting her and such. Then, yeah, a little later in that, and then when Samantha does wake up, because she would use the toilet and while Leroy is brushing his teeth. And at one point, yeah, because Samantha notices a tattoo on Leroy's arm named Winston. Who is Winston? And, you know, she's asking him this. Someone that he hates and such, you know? And Sam recommending that maybe he should remove the tattoo, and he says that he will someday. Then they would hit breakfast, and they would leave Frank behind until he wakes up some and all that. But little do they realize whom is approaching the hotel. Well, because it's the well-dressed black man. He's alive. He managed to survive those gunshots from Leroy, so he's back, and he's made his way to Vegas, and he would make his way into the hotel room that they were in, Frank being the only one, and the black man noticing, like, a key that's hanging up top, like, of a, you know, lampshade and such. But coming back to Leroy and Sam, you know, talking about what happened, and when, according to Leroy, long story short, that, well, apparently because Frank noticed Leroy's gun that he hid in the towels and such, and Leroy worried about how Frank would feel about him and the position he does and with the gun and all that, and, you know, and this Frank guy, if he really likes him and such. But to Leroy's surprise, and Leroy saying this to Sam, Frank had no problem with, you know, when discovering the gun and all that, and with what, you know, Leroy has done in the past, it's in the past. What matters is moving forward in the future. Very positive and amazing to what Frank said to Leroy. Even Sam, she's really happy to hear about this. And Leroy, for the first time in 12 years, you know, he breaks down, you know, because of something amazing that happened with Leroy. And, you know, even Sam, you know, she wonders, you know, what he last cried about 12 years ago. And, like, you know, Leroy commenting, oh, yeah, that'll bring the sun up. But, yeah, but coming back to Mexico, by this point, yeah, Jerry and Ted, obviously after they had breakfast and all that, they would make their way to this pawn shop where, yeah, Jerry noticed this earlier. The Mexican policeman would give the pistol / the Mexican to this pawn shop owner named Joe. Yeah, Joe, the pawn shop owner, being played by Castulo Guerra, if I even got his full name right. Again, you know me sometimes. And yeah, through some conversations that each of them would have, and yeah. And still, to speed things up some, they would make their way inside of the pawn shop. Ted, doesn't take him too long to open a gun pointed at Joe, but Joe, he's handling this very well, but Jerry just getting straight to the bottom of, you know, just, you know, give us the pistol and I'll be good and such. It seems to go pretty well. But, yeah, obviously they're going to still do something with Joe. Not kill him, of course, but just, you know, have him sit in a chair and handcuff him. And then, once the pistol's retrieved, Jerry would then open a gun and turn it to Ted, because Jerry wants to know what Ted was talking about on the phone with Bernie. And when then Jerry's saying to Ted that, you know, you told him to off me. And also this having to do with Ted getting his fortune and all that, his portion and such, involving his portion, all the stuff they say, just, yeah. But, I don't know, because, like, in the case of Ted, like, you know, it's obvious that he hated to be in that position, because I'm sure as though that, yeah, Ted considering Jerry a really good friend of him. But sadly, in the case of Jerry, not viewing Ted as his friend anymore. Yeah. And like Joe, he would handcuff Ted as well. And yeah, he would close up the pawn shop and, yeah, make it look like it's closed. There were a few Mexican kids that were impersonating, like, doing an impression of pistols and all that, and Jerry playing along and, getting them to run off. Just, okay. Then coming back to Vegas, after Sam and Leroy, they had breakfast, well, they would make their way back to the hotel. A crime scene has happened, and a body being covered and such. I think it's obvious where it's leading to. Yeah, because when they would make their way back to the hotel room, it would be discovered that, yeah, Frank supposedly jumped out of the building, and this really hurtens Leroy. And this upsets Samantha. She feels very sorry about what's happened. And, yeah, Leroy, he would tell Sam to pack her shit up and let's just get going. But at one point, Leroy would notice, even after when someone investigating the crime scene would ask and knock on the door, and Leroy would respond, that if anything's wrong and such, that happened. Well, at one point, Leroy, while sitting down, he noticed the key that was hanging from the lamp chandelier was not hanging. It was on the floor. And yeah, him getting very suspicious. Not to mention, he hid a gun. Before he and Sam left to get breakfast, he hid a gun underneath a chair in the sofa. And, well, Sam, when she's packing her stuff up, well, then we would see the well-dressed black man approaching and emerging, and he would once again take Sam hostage. And when thinking that he knows where Leroy is hiding, just like what happened at that restroom, he hid where the door was. Yep, he shoots for the door that leads into the bathroom, but that's not where Leroy is. He hid behind the curtains. And that's when he once again shoots at the well-dressed black man, taunting him and such, and, because on account of what the well-dressed black man did. Because, yeah, the black man having murdered Frank, throwing him out of the window and such. And in the end, Leroy would kill the well-dressed black man. This is for Frank, and boom, he's shot dead right in the face. We don't visually see it, but yeah, obviously, we don't need to. We don't need that much graphic stuff shown. Anyways, so, yeah, once that's done for, that's the end of the well-dressed black man for sure. And sadly, for Frank, and when Leroy found a great guy in his life, it's unfortunate. Well, coming back to Jerry, because, well, of course, yeah, he got the pistol back. But even though, yeah, he was betrayed by Ted and all that, well, at one point, because, yeah, coming back to Bernie and Bobby, because they would have this conversation and it would lead to, like, them realizing that they're going to be screwed. And on account that their boss, Arnold, has become a changed man. Something changed in him while being in prison. He's not the same Arnold Margolis that they've known him to be, being the mob boss and such. Just, yeah, and Bernie especially doesn't like the sound of this. Yeah, and something has to be done. And on account of, involving the pistol, Jerry, and so on. Yeah. Okay, and still speeding things up some. Well, at one point when Jerry tries to make his way back from Mexico to, yeah, well, unfortunately, he's got the wrong passport. He's got Ted's. And even when he went back to the pawn shop to retrieve it, it went, that was gone, everything. And Ted went missing. And that would be the last we see of Ted when Jerry handcuffed him in the pawn shop. That would be the last we see of him, as well as Joe. What happened to Joe? Well, I mean, we never know. Just, we're left to assume. Just, even if, like, GoreVerbinski and anybody else involved in the Mexican established this. But anyways, and if any of you know, leave a comment. But back on point, because of this, well, Jerry was not able to get back, and even when, Sam and Leroy, they were there at the airport where Jerry was supposed to be, never showed up, and Leroy trying to attempt to call Jerry, nothing, and Plan B happening and such, just, yeah, things just still going haywire. Nothing intentional from Jerry, of course. Yeah, definitely on account of this, of what happened. Wrong passport, he's got Ted's, and so on. And then it would lead to where Jerry would make his way back to the hotel, and he would meet with the hotel clerk named, just hotel clerk, being played by Jose Carlos Rodriguez. And because, yeah, this happened earlier where, asking the hotel clerk and such to stand by, and by having, someone from the U.S. call in and all that, but nothing has happened. And even the hotel clerk pointing out to Jerry that Mr. Williamson, an old man who had been sitting on one of the chairs, sound asleep, he had been waiting for the exact same thing like what's happening to Jerry. And that Mr. Williamson had been there since March. And Jerry just having a laugh about this and such. And right there, yeah, a phone call comes in, and sure enough, it's straight from Leroy and Sam. And yeah, I mean, Jerry, he had no idea what to expect when he answered, hello? Because, he was laughing, and this pisses off Sam. Yep, we're back to seeing Sam and Jerry bickering and such. However, Leroy trying to be the peacemaker, telling both of them to calm down, and when, Jerry, he hears Leroy on the call, like, has he touched you, and anything like that, just, yeah. But overall, Leroy establishing to Jerry that, get over here, because they're in Toluca Airport, and, come over to where they're at, pick them up and such, and, by handing over the pistol, and in exchange, Leroy will hand over Sam to Jerry, and all will end well. And both of them can go on their merry way. Just, yeah. And, yeah, so, while Leroy and Sam are waiting outside of Toluca Airport, well, once again, they're talking about love and such. And when it comes up to this, when, at some point, when is enough is enough and such? Yeah, enough is enough. And, Sam, she would go on saying about needing sunshine and all these things, and her emotions, and, Leroy would explain about, what it's been like for him and love, and on account of when he met Frank and such, that experience he had, and he would then answer about, when is enough enough, because enough is enough. The answer, because, people who, the two of them are madly in love, and when just things like, getting out of hand, when does it come to that point that enough is enough? Well, the answer is, and according to Leroy, never. That's a good point. Yeah, with all that they specifically say, the conversation and about love, and about two people who are still in love with one another, despite the negativity and all that, when to that point enough is enough? The answer, never. Yeah. And it's an emotional part, of course. And yeah, did I forget to mention that this movie does pretty well with its emotional moments? I mean, yeah, because there's a lot of humorous moments and moments you don't see coming. Just, a bit of gruesome stuff. But yeah, at the same time, this movie does pretty well with having some emotional parts. Yeah, and on account of, the journey that Sam and Leroy go through, and when Leroy met Frank. Yeah. And yeah, even when, Sam said it herself that, she still loves Jerry. And when Leroy pointed this out to her, and while in Las Vegas, Sam admitted that even though she's just, having issues with Jerry, how she's feeling towards Jerry, she's worried about him very strongly and all that. And that's a good sign. Yeah, definitely. But yeah, then we would, of course, see Jerry finally making his way. And after all this time, now Jerry and Sam are reunited, and, with Leroy being there. But, of course, Jerry and Sam, they don't talk to each other for a little bit. They don't look at each other while they're on the road. But, once again, Leroy trying to do his very best being the peacemaker and so on. And just to keep things calm, occupied, and so on, and if nothing goes funky, as he said. So, with all three of them being on the road, and the car that, that they both pointed out, Sam and Leroy, being a funky rental that Leroy points out to Jerry. Well, Leroy's still trying to be the peacemaker, noticing that both of them are grouchy, let's get something to eat and all that. And, Sam's at it once again, and so is Jerry. And Jerry threatening to crash the car if Sam doesn't shut up. And if she says one more word, which she does so. And, Jerry's like, all right. Just he's moving the car around, almost about to wreck it by a pole. Then when almost hitting traffic and so on, one of the tires, deflates, just, yeah. Then Sam, she would get out of the car, and Jerry he's had it by this point, fine, go to Vegas, I've had it. And then Jerry would, then change the tire, all while Leroy, he actually checks the glove compartment, because we would see earlier that Jerry, he did something with the pistol, hid it or something, but yeah. Then Leroy would step out of the van, and actually, he would at one point try to shoot down Jerry. However, with some incoming traffic, he puts the gun away, and this time Leroy offers to, change the tire. But that's when Jerry, he would pull out a gun. And Leroy, he would whip out his gun, and boom! Gunfire strikes. Sam heard this. Whom got shot? She runs back to the car. Jerry got Leroy first. Yeah, and that's the end and demise of Leroy. And it turns out that Leroy is not Leroy. And it's not whom Sam thought he was really, who he was really. On account that the journey that Sam and Leroy went, and when, Leroy softened up some, he met Frank, But until Frank died, yeah. But, point being, is that, Leroy is not Leroy. Because Jerry, being well aware of who Leroy is, he met him in Minnesota in 1997. He tells Sam that, and saying to Sam that Leroy is black. Yeah, the well-dressed black man as he's credited, that was Leroy! And he was one of Arnold's men. And yeah, Leroy having been sent, the right Leroy, the Leroy, to come in and surely, everything would have been taken care of, but no. This other guy pretending to be Leroy was one of Bernie's men. Just Bernie, hiring this one guy pretending to be Leroy to take in Samantha and all that. And overall, because, getting the pistol and all that, Leroy would have taken care of Jerry and more than likely Samantha, then go after, Arnold, supposedly. And turns out, Leroy's actual name is Winston. Yeah. And hence the tattoo he had, Winston. And am I to guess that, well, probably, because, Winston, he despised himself. He just wanted to move on from whom he used to be. Something like that. I don't know. Or if he was lying to Samantha when Samantha noticed the tattoo. But, yeah. Jerry realizing this, that, he had been set up and telling this to Samantha, taunting Winston's lifeless body and such, and all that, and yeah. And Samantha, by this point, all she wants to do is just go back home. She's had enough of this drama, all hell breaking loose and such. Yeah, who can blame her? And still seems more than likely that, both her and Jerry, they're really not gonna, by any chance, get back together. Or at least that's what we think for a moment. And so, at the airport, Sam is about to disembark, and that'll be that. Yep, she would hop on the plane, and even when Jerry would wave goodbye and such, and, well, when a truck passes by, a tanker, she's no longer in plain sight, and presumably, she's now inside of the plane and such. However, once Jerry starts to walk off, he hears a voice wanting to ask him a question. It's Sam! She didn't board the plane! And she has a change of heart. And she asks him the question, when two people love each other, but just can't seem to get together, when does it seem like, enough is enough, as, what she asks him? And the answer that Jerry says, just like what Winston said, never. Great. Yep, so all is good now. And now Sam is now officially tagging along with Jerry to settle this once and for all on account of the pistol, aka the Mexican, the title of the film. And they would be back at the hotel and waiting for further things to happen, and when they start talking and so on, because about the pistol and, you know, Arnold, Margolis, all that, just, yeah. But they seem to be getting along pretty good as of now, still having that kind of chit-chat, just like, you know, getting a bit out of hand, but nothing too bad, of course. It's pretty amusing. Yeah, so, yeah. So we're kind of getting up to the climax, because we know that by this point, you know, one way or another, because the pistol is going to be returned to, and we're bound to see Arnold very soon, that's for sure. Oh, and also, Sam brought this up to Jerry, because when knowing about that, yeah, early on, Bernie, was the one that brought up to Jerry about sex and travel. Yeah, the whole thing of sex and travel. And also, like, you know, both of them talking about that they're going to get out of this together and live their happily ever after. Even Jerry assuring Samantha that that's what's going to happen. Then, when they're staying in one of the rooms, Samantha, she's watching a Mexican show with no English subtitles, but she's getting into the emotional stuff. And Jerry, he's on the phone on account of when Arnold Margolese is going to be released from prison. And, you know, when he's not getting any good progress, and when talking on the phone and such, negotiating and such, saying that it's not going to be until Thursday, but Sam addressing to Jerry that today is Thursday, so that means Arnold's out of jail. Yeah, Arnold Margolese is out of jail, and still, we're going to soon see Arnold. Then at one point, remember that dog that tagged along with Jerry early on? Well, the dog is barking at someone that's in the car that Jerry drove in, and Jerry would go to check this out, and Samantha would hide the gun. She would tie it around her ankle and such, and Jerry would go check to see what the commotion is. Someone is sleeping in the car he was driving, and, basically he's being distracted by this because someone came into their hotel room searching for the pistol, aka the Mexican, couldn't find it, and luckily for Samantha, good on her, she hid under the mattress of the pillow, of the bed and such, the bed mattress. And yeah, that guy that was trying to look for the gun didn't notice and not once checked the bed mattress. Interesting. And good on Samantha for hiding. But because no luck trying to find the gun, that's when that guy whistled to the guy that was in the car, and it would basically lead to an ambush, kind of, because the car thieves, we would see the car thieves once again. They would punch out Jerry, and they would bring him to, well, basically, we're now going to finally see Arnold Margolese, and Jerry's going to meet with him and all that, and who knows how this is going to turn out, but we're now about to see Arnold. And also, as I mentioned, the car thieves, because they're back. And also, car thief number 1, whom got his foot shot. He's there too. So, Jerry would be taken to where Arnold Margolese is located. And, lo and behold, after all this build-up and mentioning of Arnold, we finally see him in the flesh. Arnold Margolese, being played by the late, legendary Gene Hackman. Yes. And again, the fact that Arnold Margolese, he's one of the top billed characters, and, Gene Hackman being one of the top billed stars. The fact that he's only at the very end of the movie, up to 22 minutes and such in the movie, it's still worth it. Yeah, and great to see that Gene Hackman, having been a part of a movie that is directed by GoreVerbinski. But Jerry, because, and Arnold, when asking Jerry what it'll take to get the pistol back, Jerry, because by this point, he doesn't care in, the screw you business by using the F-bomb, but Arnold addresses Jerry that he didn't screw him over. It was all Bernie, because Arnold had Bernie sent out Jerry to retrieve the pistol, but little did Arnold realize until he would discover that Bernie already had a buyer for the pistol and such. And basically, yeah, when Arnold would discover that Bernie flat out betrayed him. Because on account that, yeah, Bernie did not like the change that came into Arnold all while he was in jail. But in the case of Arnold, it's a good change, definitely. He became a much better man, because long story short, Arnold would explain what changed him and while spending all throughout being in jail, and on account that the men that brought in Jerry to meet with Arnold, they're all under the leadership of this guy named Tropelio. I think, yeah, I'm saying that right. Being played by Ernesto Gomez Cruz. Because Arnold had an encounter with Tropelio's son in jail. And when his son would share Arnold the story about the pistol, the Mexican, and, his father's father having built that, Tropelio, that is. And, vowing to one day retrieve the pistol / the Mexican for his father, when one day getting out of prison. And this is where we get our third storytelling of the pistol having been made on account of the gunsmith and all that. Yeah, our third and final story. Yeah, so, Tropelio's son that does the narration for this. Because when eventually the nobleman finally showed up on account of his son, yeah, the nobleman being played by Humberto Fernandez Tristan, and his son, being credited as nobleman's son, being played by Louis Philippe Torvar, if I got his full name right, but yeah, still. But yeah, they finally arrive. The gunsmith, gives the Mexican to the nobleman, and the gunsmith's daughter, already dressed in her bride getup, and the nobleman's son about to, take the girl's hand in marriage and such. But yeah, still, on account of the gunsmith's assistant being devastated by this, and even, yeah, the daughter being upset that she's not going to be with the man she really loves, the assistant, well, still, the gunsmith's assistant still having put a curse on the pistol, and when the nobleman's son would test out the pistol, the Mexican, shooting a vase, yep, and of course nothing happens. And then, yeah, the nobleman's son would notice, and when it doesn't work out all that great for him, he would notice the look on each of their faces, the assistant and his bride-to-be. They're looking at each other very romantically and sweet and all that. And this upsets and puts the nobleman's son in rage, and he gets out his own gun, and he's about to shoot the assistant. However, and when the nobleman's son dropped the Mexican, the gunsmith's daughter picked up the pistol and was going to shoot him, but her dad told her not to spare their lives and all that, not to do anything bad and so on, because they'll get shot if she shoots him. So she obliges, but the nobleman's son, he kills the assistant, and the gunsmith's daughter, she takes her own life. She uses the Mexican, shoots her head, and yeah, she's done for. Because if she can't have the assistant, then the nobleman's son can't have her. And yeah, with the curse having been put on the pistol ever since then. Yep. And again, like what I said, Arnold explaining that whom he met in jail, Tropelio's son, and whom, even Arnold viewed Tropelio's son as a son to him, like a son he never had, even though he was the son to Tropelio. Still, the bond and friendship that both of them would have, like father and son, that kind of thing. Again, Tropelio's son vowing to one day get the gun, but sadly, Tropelio's son never got around to retrieving the gun himself. And according to Arnold, because how Tropelio's son died, it was 18 months later that he took the bullet in the belly. He blocked Arnold being killed and such. Yeah. And so yeah, that's how Torpilio's son died. And yep, then of course it would lead to Arnold having been amazed by that story. It would touch him, it would change him. He would do the same thing, and in honor of Torpilio's late son, to follow in his footsteps and retrieve that pistol, aka the Mexican. And it was nice when Arnold would acknowledge, of course, his late grandson. Yeah, because, saying that he was a handful and such, but obviously, because according to Arnold, he was a good grandson, and he managed to retrieve the pistol, and when he was going to give it to Jerry, but when things ended badly, and from there on. And even, Arnold explaining, his specific reasons for, having Jerry be involved in this and trying to retrieve the Mexican pistol and such. And it would lead to where Torpilio, he, speaks with Jerry, and he doesn't speak English, just Spanish. And Car Thief number 1 translates for Jerry, because, Torpilio compliments Jerry first, telling him that you are a soldier of God. Yeah, because, we've seen what Jerry's been doing and never stopped doing what he was trying to do. Very complicated and tough, but still managed to pull through up to this point. And on account that, he doesn't have the pistol with him, because, it's in safe hands with Samantha for now. Then Torpilio would talk about, the gunsmith's daughter, being in safe hands and not being taken from the devil or anything like that, and flying with the angels and such, with all that Torpilio says, and which Car Thief number 1 translates. It's really good. Well, coming back to Samantha. Samantha still having the gun in her hands, she would receive a phone call. She would answer the phone that rings, basically, and it's Bernie. Yep, Bernie calls, and Samantha confronting Bernie on the phone, and on account of Winston, whom died, and Bernie saying, "Oh, you're in big trouble and all that." And it turns out that Bernie, he's right there at the hotel. He comes right out of the corner of the balcony, and now he's going to take Samantha hostage. Meanwhile, Jerry and the Car Thief guys, under Torpilio's leadership, they're heading their way back to the hotel, and they're greeted by Bernie, whom, they open and point their guns at Bernie, but because, they can't shoot at Bernie, because on account of Samantha. And Bernie, he's not gonna give up that easily. He's gonna get that pistol one way or the other. And not to mention that he has Samantha in the back of the trunk, but when the trunk opens, that's when Samantha unleashes the Mexican. But Jerry telling Samantha not to open fire for their sake, and this is exactly like what happened on account of when the gunsmith's daughter was going to open fire on the nobleman's son. This is what's happening. Very similar. Then, because with things getting a bit intense, Samantha would then ask Bernie if he likes sex and travel. And in response, Bernie says, "I do." And Samantha, what she says in return, wrong answer. Boom! She opens fire. Where did the bullet go? Did he get shot? Well, something did fall out of the gun. It was like a ring. And ultimately, she did not miss the target. She did shoot at Bernie right through the neck. Ooh, and a bit of smoke came out of his mouth. Bernie's done for. He falls on his back. That's the end of Bernie. Sayonara, you asshole. And who betrayed Arnold, of course. And, of course, on account that, as I said, Bernie was not pleased with Arnold having changed. But it was for the best for Arnold. It's good they became a much better man. But, and now the madness is finally over. And now the gun can now be brought back to Torpilio and such, to honor his late son and the gunsmith's daughter, indeed. And even all ends well, officially, definitely, for Jerry and Samantha. The ring that came from the Mexican, well, he has the car thief's blessing to give it to Samantha and all that. Yeah, that's great to see. And last two scenes we get, Trapelio looking at the gun that now sits there on top of the fireplace, and with the portrait of the gunsmith's daughter, now it's all good. And did I forget to mention that with the design and craft of the Mexican pistol, part of it has a shape of a heart. You know what I'm talking about. That's a nice detail. Awesome, even when the camera focuses on that part. Great to see. And Jerry and Samantha on the road, and obviously they're going to make their way to Vegas, presumably. And Samantha wants to hear him say it for the 4th time, that, you know, I love you and all that. Then Jerry would talk about the gun having been built for the nobleman's son, although he missaid nobleman. He didn't say it correctly. And once again, they would get into a bit of a nothing too extreme, just a little simple argument and all that, because Jerry mispronounced, and, you know, I'm calling a timeout. By the way, that traffic light that they passed by, it was actually at one point was being repaired. So, yeah. But yeah, that's our movie, The Mexican. Man, I tell ya, The Mexican, with so much that happens in this, with its storyline, great cast of talents, it's overall really good. I really enjoyed The Mexican for what it is. You know, an underrated film of GoreVerbinski's, but nothing bad about it whatsoever. Everything about The Mexican is really great, from beginning to end. The storyline, GoreVerbinski's direction, great cast of talents from Brad Pitt, Julia Roberts, James Gandolfini, J.K. Simmons, Bob Balaban, Sherman Augustus, Michael Cerveris, Gene Hackman, David Krumholtz, the list goes on. The Mexican cast members and, you know, those that played, you know, the gunsmith's assistant, and the daughter, yeah. Salaverdo, Sanjis, Alan, Cian Heroiti, and Melissa Romero, everybody else, and just, yeah, Jeremy Roberts, just the entire cast, they were fantastic. The music and score, fantastic as well. I'll remember to put the name of the composer's name in the text, because, yeah, excellent. Yeah, the unexpected moments, the hilarious, the emotional, heartwarming moments, the story we get of, you know, the gunsmith, and on account of the pistol, the Mexican, yep, which being the title of the film, just, yeah, and taking place all throughout Mexico and a little bit in Las Vegas, but most prominently Mexico. Yeah, also the dog actor, you know, that was there. Yeah, the dog was good too at times. Yeah, just everybody else that was involved, just overall, The Mexican, it's really good. Definitely an underrated gem of Verbinski's. Just, yeah, everything about it really great, all the above. And I'm giving The Mexican, yeah, this sounds about right, yeah, 8 out of 10 stars. Yes, 8 out of 10 stars for The Mexican. And what about you guys? What did you think of The Mexican itself? Is it one of your top favorite films to be directed by good old Gore Verbinski? What was your first impression on it when you first watched it? You know, if you owned maybe a VHS copy, DVD, and stuff like that, or if you watched it on digital streaming. And, yeah, favorite moments to come from this film, everything that goes on, just, yeah, but just, again, overall, what do you think of The Mexican itself, with what all I've had to say, my review, and yeah, what did you think of my review? Leave comments, and give this review video a like, as always. And so, guys, with all that being said, thank you very much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed my review of Gore Verbinski's The Mexican, and coming straight from DreamWorks, more review videos are coming your way. They're going to be awesome. Keep looking forward, and I will see you guys in the next video / review. And, well, Gore Verbinski Movie Week has just begun. Stay tuned later tonight, because the next GoreVerbinski film that I'll be reviewing, well, fast forward 4 years later, and after Verbinski would direct, and after directing The Mexican, having directed The Ring, Curse of the Black Pearl, the next film that Verbinski would direct in 2005 would be a low-budgeted film. Like, you know, it's basically the lowest budgeted film that Verbinski ever directed, starring two great talents, Nick Cage and Michael Caine. I'm pretty sure you know exactly what it is that I'm talking about. Oh, yes. Yeah, just, again, stay tuned for that. Part of GoreVerbinski Movie Week. Take care, and peace out.